Have you ever walked into a room and found a vampire? No, not the good-looking kind, but a foul creature with bony limbs and ashen skin. The one that snarls as you enter, like a beast about to pounce. The kind that roots you to the spot with its sunken, hypnotic eyes, rendering you unable to flee as you watch the hideous thing uncoil from the shadows. Has your heart started racing though your legs refuse to? Have you ever felt time slow as the creature crosses the room in the darkness of a blink? Have you shuddered with fear when it places one clawed hand atop your head and another under your chin so it can tilt you, exposing your neck? Have you squirmed as its rough, dry tongue slides down your cheek, over your jaw to your throat in a slithering search that's seeking your artery? Have you felt its hot breath release in a hiss against your skin when it probes your pulse, the flow that leads to your brain? Has its tongue rested there, throbbing slightly as if savoring the moment? Have you ever then experienced a sinking, sucking blackness as you discover that not all vampires feed on blood, some feed on memories? Well, have you? Maybe not, but let me rephrase the question. Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly forgotten why you came in? I live in Osaka, Japan, and often use the subway to go to work in the morning. One day, when I was waiting for the train, I noticed a homeless man standing in a corner of the subway station, muttering to himself as people passed by. He was holding out a cup and seemed to be begging for spare change. A fat woman passed by the homeless man, and I distinctly heard him say, "Pig." Wow, I thought to myself. This homeless man is insulting people, and he still expects them to give him money. Then a tall businessman went by, and the homeless guy muttered, "Human." Human? I couldn't argue with that. Obviously, he was a human. The next day, I arrived early at the subway station and had some time to kill. So I decided to stand close to the homeless man and listen to his strange mutterings. A thin, haggard looking man passed in front of him, and I heard the homeless guy mutter, "Cow." Cow, I thought? The man was much too skinny to be a cow. He looked more like a turkey or chicken to me. A minute or so later, a fat man went by, and the homeless man said, "Potato." Potato? I was under the impression that he called all fat people pig. That day at work, I couldn't stop thinking about the homeless man and his puzzling behavior. I kept trying to find some logic or pattern in what he was muttering. Perhaps he has some kind of psychic ability, I thought. Maybe he knows what these people were in a previous life. In Japan, many people believe in reincarnation. I observed the homeless man many times and began to think my theory was right. I often heard him calling people things like rabbit, or onion, or sheep, or tomato. One day, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to ask him what was going on. As I walked up to him, he looked at me and said, "Bread." I tossed some money into his cup and asked him if he had some kind of psychic ability. The homeless man smiled and said, "Yes, indeed. I do have a psychic ability. It is an ability I obtained years ago, but it is not what you might expect. I can't tell the future or read minds or anything like that." "Then what is your ability?" I asked eagerly. "The ability is merely to know the last thing somebody ate," he said. I laughed because I realized he was right. He said, "Bread." The last thing I had eaten for breakfast that day was toast. I walked away shaking my head. Of all the psychic abilities someone could have, that one must be the most useless. Did you catch it? If you haven't, rewind and listen to the story once more from the beginning. I'm eager to hear if anyone here got it on the first listen. It took me a while after reading, but the realization absolutely chilled me to the bone. Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, see ya. You wake up in the middle of the night. Your cat is cozily nested behind your knees, and the weight of your blanket warms your tired body nicely. You sigh happily. When you are about to drift again into a sweet slumber, your cat hisses, runs frantically off your bed, and hides behind the curtains. She has never acted so oddly before, and that upsets you. You look around in your room for anything that could have startled her, but nothing is out of the ordinary. You stay still and listen for anything unusual. You can hear your cat drinking water from her bowl in the hall, making that disgusting slurping sound that always disturbs you. Relieved that nothing is wrong, you lie back down and pull your blanket up to your chin. But before you close your eyes, you see the shadowy silhouette of your feline friend ducking under your desk, her hair standing up. You gasp, if it isn't your cat drinking water, then what is making the sound? Slowly and as silently as possible, you get off your bed. But despite your best efforts, the old wooden framework groans loudly. You freeze. The slurping sound stops for a second before it resumes. Any doubts that this was your imagination's doing are cast away. Heart pounding on your chest, you tiptoe your way to the door. You step out of your room and look across the hallway towards your cat's bowl, and there you see her. Your mother crouching on hands and knees. Her limbs are long and skinny, and her fingers are gaunt and bony. Her messy hair covers her pale, distorted face, her skin stretched against her cheekbones. She is greedily licking the water in your cat's bowl with a tongue black as coal and twice the normal size. Suddenly she stops. She slowly turns her head towards you. She stares deep into your eyes, her pupils two unmoving dots of malice. You jump in panic and run back into your room while your mother gallops on all fours towards you. You close the door behind you, moments before it starts shaking violently, loud bangs echoing across the house. You quickly throw your body against the door, blocking it. The whole doorframe quakes fiercely, but you hold firm. Then the banging stops. An otherworldly sense of stillness hangs in the air. After a few seconds of excruciating silence, the knob starts turning. Honey, is something wrong? You hear your mother's soothing voice from the other side. Why did you close the door? I'm worried. Please let me in. Why does it always have to be cats? I'd like to know if any of you had a similar experience before. I'd like to share a similar personal experience from my childhood. I remember that on days when I'm alone at home, I would hear a meow in my mother's voice, as if coming from the direction of the other room next to the one I'm in. When I turn to look, there's no one there. I've always assumed that my mother had come home and was playing a prank on me. It happened a lot, and sometimes I would even laugh and answer it, telling it that I know it was her hiding behind the wall. Sometimes I would run over to see if I can try to catch her. But there's always no one there. I'd search the rooms in the house, but find no one. I'd think it was my mind playing tricks on me because of how often my mother does it. And then one day, whilst I was washing my face in the kitchen sink, I heard the meow coming from the direction to my right. There I saw it, my mother's head peeking out from behind the corner. She laughed and disappeared back behind the wall. When I ran to catch her, I heard my mother outside, and the familiar sound of her keys as she opens the door. She had just returned from work. After that day, I stopped responding to the meows. I pretended I didn't hear it every time it called, and as I got older, it happened less and less. I'd like to think it didn't happen, or it was just my imagination, but when I asked my sister about it, She told me she had experienced it many times when she was younger too, but she never saw anything. I'm not sure what it was, but it never did anything bad. If any of you have any idea, let me know. I'd love very much to understand what it was and if there was any way we could have been friends. Well, until next time, see you in the next video. A husband and wife were at home one evening when they heard a knock on the door. When they went to answer it, there was a strange gentleman standing on the doorstep. He was dressed in an expensive black suit, and he was holding a large briefcase.
I wonder if I might have a few moments of your time.
He said. Assuming he was a traveling salesman, they invited him in. The gentleman placed his briefcase down on the kitchen table and took something out. It was a box with a single red button on the top. He handed the box to the husband and wife.
Today is your lucky day.
He said in a calm tone.
You have an opportunity to become rich beyond your wildest imagination. If you press this button, you will receive $1 million in cash. There is just one catch. Someone you don't know will die.
Saying that, the gentleman opened his briefcase and showed them the stacks of money inside. The gentleman told them he would return the next day to collect the box. After he left, the husband and wife discussed the box. They argued for hours. Eventually, they decided to press the button. Nothing happened. The next day, the gentleman came back. He took the box, and in exchange, he gave them $1 million. As he was about to leave, the husband asked, "Did someone really die?"
Of course.
The gentleman replied.
It happened last night. In a distant place. Someone you don't know died.
The husband felt guilty. His conscience was eating at him. "One more question," he
Yes, what do you want to know?
said the gentleman. "What are you going to do with the box now?" The gentleman smiled and said,
I'm going to give it to someone who doesn't know you.
"Would you have pushed the button?" It seems like whether the couple pushes the button or not, there's the possibility that they might end up being one of the unsuspecting victim. In that case, the logical thing to do is to push the button and accept the cash. However, it is exactly because of this train of thought that propels the cycle. Any philosophy student listening, is there a right answer to this question? I think many of us would like to know. Please leave your answer in the comments below, and until next time, have a good week, everyone. No one will come for you. That's what he said every night as I lay entombed in the fears I had long ago resigned myself to. My brother loves to torment me, he always has. He's always taken great pleasure in my fear and misery, his idea of fun. When I was 3 years old, I vividly remember every night. At around 9 o'clock, my mother would tell me it was time for bed. She would tuck me into the bottom bunk of an old steel, self-assembled bunk bed. She would kiss my forehead before saying goodnight, turning the light off and leaving the room, closing the door tight. As I lay staring at the dim light of the room, taking in the various silhouettes of the furniture, I would hear the springs of the top bunk creak and give. I would close my eyes and silently cry, knowing my brother's cruel game was about to begin. Every night was the same. My brother would growl at me in his malevolent croak about all the pain and misery awaiting me.
No one will come for you.
He would begin.
No one will save you when I take you down to the other place.
I would lie there, my body cocooned in the catatonic terror, only able to silently weep and listen as my brother would describe the various tortures he had thought up for me. like breaking all my bones one by one so slowly that by the slow, deliberate snap of my last rib, my fingers would have already somewhat healed, allowing him to start again and again forever. He would tell me that one day he would deliver on his threats, but for now, it was more fun to just tell me what he had in store. My brother loves to torment me. So, yeah, this was my childhood, up until I turned 7. My father decided that it was time to get rid of the bunk beds. He had bought them when my mother was pregnant. We live in a small flat in London, not a lot of room at all. So, when my mother told my father she was expecting twins, my brother and I, my mother says he was so insane with joy, like a hyperactive child on Christmas Eve. He went out to the bed store that day and bought that damn steel bunk bed, saying it was the perfect solution for our lack of room. Even though he knew the bunk bed wouldn't be used until we were at least 2.5 years old, he had our bedroom fully decorated and furnished, complete with bunk bed 2 months before we were born. I say we. Sadly, my brother died whilst my mother was giving birth, so I should say before I was born. I don't know much about what happened exactly. I'm very hesitant to ask my parents, as the mention of the subject sends the two into tears, and, well, it's just not spoken about in our home. I can't believe how well I still remember those days. I'm 27 now. I've got my own little flat, an okay job, and a beautiful collection of sleeping pills. I'm taking a whole bottle tonight. I'm gonna finally sleep tonight. He's not gonna keep me awake tonight. Oh God, I missed that bunk bed. At least when he had the top bunk, I couldn't see him. My brother loves to torment me. Hello, I suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder, which is an anxiety disorder in which people have unwanted and repeated thoughts, feelings, ideas, or behaviors. In other words, my life is a systematic pattern, but yesterday I experienced a flaw in my system. I awoke that morning in my lakeside home promptly at 6:45 a.m., as I do every morning. Before leaving my bedroom, I touched the doorknob 3 times. I had to, I needed to. On my way downstairs, I made sure not to step on the second to last step. I never touch that step, I just can't. I made my usual breakfast of toast, scrambled eggs, and black coffee. I never eat anything else in the morning, just always those 3. Turning my iPad on, I checked the local news headlines like usual. But today, something was missing. I couldn't place my finger on it. Did I forget something? The strange feeling lingered with me all the way to my car. On my way out the front door, I made certain to lock my door, then unlock it and lock it again. Driving to work, I couldn't help but feel like a part of me was missing. What did I miss? How could I possibly have missed it? I hoped that the feeling would go away while working. It didn't. It stayed with me for 12 whole hours. I left the office at around 6:45 p.m. and headed back home. About 25 minutes into my commute, I stopped for the red traffic light at the intersection at Marbury and Westway. But as the light turned from red to green, I couldn't help but feel that strange sensation again. The only other person near me was the man driving behind me. He blared his horn for me to get going, but instead of accelerating, I just unrolled my window and motioned him to go around me. He did. I dreadfully sat there in my car, still stopped at the intersection. Something is seriously wrong. What am I missing here? I touched everything in my car, hoping that it would spark my memory. I touched the dashboard, the leather seats, the emergency brake, and even the roof. It did nothing for me. My hands began to tremble as I slowly drove away. This isn't right. I don't like this. Arriving home, I pulled my 1974 Mustang into the garage. I washed the car every weekday, but not on the weekends. I only wash the front and the back of the car, never the sides. No matter how dirty they get, I never wash the sides. I simply just can't. But something else seemed missing from my daily routine as I washed. No, not again. First the news, then the intersection, now this. Finishing up at the car, I jogged out to the backyard. Opening up the tool shed, I felt yet another thing missing from my pattern. I screamed, "This isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right." I stumbled out the shed and gazed out at the lake. It always seemed to calm me when my anxiety got out of control. But tonight, all I wanted to do was sleep. I needed to finish this day. The next morning, I woke up at 6:45 a.m., touched the doorknob 3 times, and I made sure not to step on the second to last step on my way to the kitchen. I prepared my toast, scrambled eggs, and black coffee. I turned on the iPad, browsed the local news. It's still missing. I became aggravated. What is it I could be missing? I began to feel nauseous. Hurrying out the door in a vicious rage, I quickly locked the door, unlocked it, and locked it again. Then I drove off to work. I tend to get a lot of work done when I'm upset, strangely. So at least I felt some accomplishment when I left the office at 6:45 p.m. I drove fast on my way home. What am I missing? I approached the red light at Marbury and West Road. Come on, think. A man was walking in the middle of the intersection on his way to the other side. Why can't I remember? The man's head spun as he noticed my Mustang coming straight for him at 85 miles per hour. I noticed him too. A wave of horror crossed over my face as I watched him dive to one side. I swerved into the same direction. A loud clunk was heard as I crushed the man underneath my vehicle. Oh God. Jumping out of my car, I hesitated on what to do. He lay there writhing in agony, making horrendous guttural wails. I popped open the trunk to my Mustang, lifted the screaming man, and headed him in. In agony, entering my garage, I made sure to wash the blood off the front and rear of the car. The sides were not necessary. After dragging his broken body out to the backyard, I jogged to the shed. Inside were black garbage bags, cinder blocks, and a hacksaw. After dismembering the man, I was able to fit both the remains and a cinder block into the bag. Dropping him into the lake was all that was left to do. The following morning, I made sure to wake at 6:45 a.m. and touch my doorknob 3 times before skipping the second to last step on my way to the kitchen. While eating my toast, scrambled eggs, and black coffee, I browsed the local news on my iPad. The top headline, "Hit and Run Serial Killer Strikes Again." I smiled. Back to normal. I've always been fascinated by Clefairy. It's a cute, adorable Pokemon that was up for consideration for the mascot of the series. But it's always been a bit strange as well. It is found almost exclusively in Mont Moon and can only be evolved with a Moonstone. It's constantly hinted at that the Moonstone and the Clefairy are from the moon, and Clefairy can pull off just about any move in the game with Metronome. There are obviously more mysterious and strange Pokemon, but to me, Clefairy seems to have more to hide than most others. Recently, I got a peek behind the curtain, or at least I think I did. I'm still not sure what exactly happened. One of my favorite hobbies is browsing eBay for bootleg video games, specifically Game Boy games. I don't know what it was about that console, but it seemed to open the floodgates for poorly made, poorly translated bootlegs more than any console before it. Most of these bootlegs were Pokemon games, no doubt because of how much of a sensation the franchise became. I already had the big ones, Pokemon Jade, which was really the Japanese exclusive telephone game, a badly translated Pokemon Green, some poor sap's well made ROM hack illegally dumped onto a real cart. I had them all, so I kind of lost steam when it came to collecting these bootlegs. Every time I would browse the eBay listings each week, it was more of the same. I slowly became bored until one day I saw something. Pokemon Pink version, special Clefairy edition, rare. This intrigued me, so I clicked on the listing to learn more. The cartridge was tinted pink and had a Clefairy on the label, very similar to the Pokemon Yellow cartridge. I quickly scrolled down to the description. Unreleased prototype cartridge. This is from my private collection, barely played. Comes with plastic protective case. See images for quality. I had heard that Game Freak were planning on making a pink version as a counterpart to yellow to appeal to the female gaming demographic, but I didn't think they got to the point of making physical cartridges for it. This was probably another one of those ROM hacks that some bootlegger put on a cartridge. Still, it didn't matter to me. I had never seen this one before, so I decided to bid on it, and with some skillful last-second sniping, the cartridge was mine. When the cartridge arrived in the mail, I immediately inspected it to see if it was legit or not. I'll spare you most of the details and say that it checked out. It had the right kind of screw, it had an embossed number, all the telltale signs of a reproduction cart were absent. This seemed to be a real cartridge. The only thing out of the ordinary was that the normal identification code on the side of the label read GBC prototype. I wasn't surprised, since the seller claimed it was an unreleased prototype, but it was another apparent sign of legitimacy. After all of my numerous checks, I finally put the game in my SP to see what it was all about. After the standard Game Freak logo screen, I saw a Clefairy in the distance running towards the camera, mirroring how Pikachu did in the yellow opening. It cut between that and various other shots. Clefairy running across some water, Clefairy admiring some fireworks at night, and most amusingly, Clefairy riding a penny farthing bicycle. Finally, the Clefairy came close enough to the screen in the running animation. It gave its trademark toothy smile and winked before the screen flashed white and went to the title screen. A horribly crunchy but still somewhat cute Clefairy sound came out of the Game Boy's speakers. Starting the game wasn't too different, though my trainer was a girl, expectedly with the default name Pink. She looked like that girl, Green from the Pokemon manga. My rival, following suit, was also a girl, with the default name Cyan. Anyways, the game played almost identically to Yellow, save for substituting Pikachu for Clefairy, and substituting Cyan's Pokemon for a Jigglypuff. This included Oak catching Clefairy in the grass outside of Pallet Town, which didn't make much sense. Sure, Pikachu also isn't native to the grass near Pallet Town, but Clefairy are basically only found in Mant Moon. Then again, this was a prototype, so had this game gotten further along in development, this probably would have been addressed. My little Clefairy, which I nicknamed Kim, even had its own cute facial expressions when I talked to her. I went through the beginning of the game as normal, leveling up Kim and catching some Pokemon as backup. Clearly, I didn't need any, as Kim's pound ability was wrecking shop. She was still a bit slower than the Rattatas and Pidgeys, but Pound was able to take care of them before she could take too much damage. I beat Brock and went through Mont Moon. I picked up a Moonstone, which I planned on using to evolve Kim when she was a high enough level as well. Even though that's where Clefairy are from in the games, I still didn't expect to come across a wild one, since Clefairy was my starter. It was in one of those underground ladder tunnels, when suddenly I encountered one. I can't think of any time in the first gen games where there's a mirror match with your starter, so this surprised me quite a bit. Before I could land an attack, it ran away. This was strange, but I chalked this up to one of the subtle differences made for pink version. I decided to level up my Pokemon before fighting Misty since I didn't have an electric type Pokemon on my team yet. So Kim had already learned Metronome going into the gym. After snaking around the paths to avoid the extra trainer fights, I got to Misty and the fight commenced. It didn't start off too well, with Kim's health being steadily lowered each turn by Misty's Staryu. That's when I decided to try out Metronome. Metronome activates a random ability from the game to use on the opponent, so every time it's used, it's a mystery. However, this time, it was even more of a mystery. On my turn, the text box read, Kim used Loom. Staryu is too scared to move. Loom? I never heard of this move before, and yet it had just saved my skin. Praying for another lucky break, I used Metronome again. Kim used Reap. I watched in amazement as the Staryu's mostly full health bar drained to zero, and Kim's nearly empty health bar refilled to full. Another crazy new move I've never heard of. My best reasoning for how this happened was that Metronome randomly selected two moves that went unused by any Pokemon in-game that hadn't yet been removed by the developers. But really, I still have no idea what the reason is. Misty sent out her Starmie, and I was back to square one. Seeing how well Metronome was doing, I used it again. Kim used Mind Twist. Starmie feels strange. It looked like Starmie had been afflicted with some sort of negative status, but it didn't say what. Next turn, after selecting my attack, some more strange text showed up. Starmie hit itself. Starmie's health slowly went down. At first I thought Starmie was confused, but it didn't say that it hit itself in its confusion or anything like that, just that it hit itself. This carried on for a few more turns. Even with Pound, this was taking a while, so I decided to use Metronome one last time. Kim used Chrysalis, an animation played that was similar to Wrap or Bind. When it finished, Starmie's sprite was replaced with that of a cocoon. Now, attacking would give the text, Kim's attack continued, typical of a wrapped Pokemon. Starmie's health drained more and more with every turn. Right before it was about to faint, Kim's attack finished, appeared in the text box. The cocoon sprite disappeared and was replaced with a Clefairy. A Clefairy came out of the cocoon that used to be a Starmie. I was speechless. What was this move? Some kind of reverse transform? As I was trying to wrap my head around what just happened, the Clefairy Starmie ran away, and the battle ended. It ran away. A trainer's Pokemon ran away. I stood there in silence, just staring at the screen for a few seconds, processing all that had transpired. Misty didn't say anything when the battle ended. Even when it went back to the inside of the gym, she said nothing. I just received the TM and that was it. It felt like she was just as confused as me. Checking with Kim showed her with a very pleased expression. She looked proud. I got a chill, but I didn't know why. I decided to take a break and get some water to clear my head. When I got back, I decided to make my way to Bill's house. After going through another fight with Cyan and the trainers on the bridge, I reached the place. I immediately noticed that Bill was in his normal human form. I guess he hadn't used his teleporter machine yet. Probably another new addition to Pink version. Talking with him, he explained how he was in the middle of testing said teleporter. Bill said he would help me if I helped him to finish the testing and went into the teleporter. He instructed me to use the PC to activate the machine, so I made my way over and pressed A. Then something strange happened. As soon as I pressed the button, Kim and I swapped places, and the sound for activating the teleporter played. A text box popped up. Bill, no, not that button. But it was too late. The sound effect for the teleporter played, and a few seconds later, Bill emerged from the teleporter as a Pokemon. Except he didn't have the normal Raiden-looking sprite. He had the Clefairy sprite. Clefairy! Bill couldn't even speak. He actually was a Clefairy now. Kim showed one of those happy face speech bubbles above her. I went over to check on Bill, but he kept making those Clefairy noises. Then I noticed something. Normally there's only one entrance exit to the houses in this game, signified by a doormat, but there was another doormat on the far wall. I decided to check it out. I was in Bill's backyard. You know, that little empty space behind his house on the overworld? There was actually something here now. It was a fenced-in backyard with a weirdly cinematic view of the sky. The moon was in the dead center of the sky. Before I could do anything, Kim moved on her own, making her way to the edge of the fence. Another text box appeared. Kim used Moonstone. Suddenly, one by one, Clefairy started climbing into the garden. There had to be at least a dozen of them. After they all had settled, Kim stood in front of them all. Clefairy used metronome. Clefairy used chrysalis. I wasn't in battle, and you can't use metronome on the overworld, so I had no idea what would happen. The screen flashed white, and when it returned to normal, my character's sprite had also become a Clefairy. The screen went to white again, and suddenly I was back on the title screen. Once again, I was speechless. I tried to load my game, but the option was gone. I could only start a new game, so I did. It skipped past the introduction with Professor Oak, and I was put immediately in my house. Except the character sprite was still a Clefairy. I checked the menu, and my name was Clefairy. I guess there still wasn't enough room for the full name. I couldn't interact with anything in my room, so I went downstairs. My mom was also a Clefairy. What the hell? I was able to interact with her, but all that did was provide a text box with Clefairy. Outside in Pallet Town, everyone was also a Clefairy. My rival and all the lab assistants were also Clefairy. I decided to see what would happen when I tried to leave Pallet Town. Surprisingly, I was stopped. Unsurprisingly, another Clefairy walked up to me. Another text box appeared. It said, Kim beckons you. Kim? But this was a new save file. How did the game remember that name? Kim dragged me into Oak's lab, and a conversation started. Kim, since you are a Clefairy, you can understand me. Kim was talking to me. I was a Clefairy, so I guess I would understand what she was saying. Clefairy came here looking for a new home. But there were already people here, so we had to make it our own. She was awfully cheery while saying all of this. Now Clefairy can all be happy together. Kim jumped in the air and twirled, then the other Clefairy followed suit. I was able to leave after that. I went to see what the rest of the game was like, and sure enough, every NPC was a Clefairy. Anytime a random battle would occur, it would be a Clefairy. Since they were all Clefairy, I was able to explore the entire game, even Cinnabar Island. Metronome was an overworld move now and could function like any HM move. There still wasn't anything to do, just Clefairy being happy and living their lives. I turned off the game after a while. What did I just play? I thought this was a legit cartridge. Would Nintendo really make a game like this? I still don't know. All I know is that the Clefairy came from the moon in search of a new home, invaded and assimilated everyone on the planet, and lived happily ever after. The end. We're all effed. From a simple grocery errand that turns into a nightmare, one man's struggle to fall asleep, a constant knocking that never goes away, to a boy's obsession with a mysterious photograph. I have 4 stories for you today that will make you question what is real and what's just a deadly illusion. Each story is packed with suspense and twists that will leave you questioning everything. So, dim the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare to be terrified. You get a phone call from your mother. Since her car has been in the shop, she asks you to go to the grocery store and pick up a few odds and ends for her: bread, milk, cereal, and chicken breasts. After writing down a small list, you reluctantly get in the car and pick up the items at the store. The lady cashier makes an odd remark to you.
You know, we're in no danger of a milk shortage.
Upon arriving at her house, you knock several times. No answer. You decide to try the door. It opens. You place the grocery bag on the counter. Strange. There seems to be 6 other grocery bags, each with identical contents. In a couple, the chicken and the milk has gone bad. Mom, you call out, but no answer. You make your way through the kitchen and into the living room. Sitting on the couch, with her head cut off and neatly resting on her lap, is your mother. Naturally, you call the police, who come over to investigate. They mention that she has been dead for nearly a week. Furthermore, the police psychiatrist is at the scene and talks to you after you give your initial statement. Sitting on the front steps, you overhear the psychiatrist talking with the crime scene investigator. It's not uncommon for people suffering from schizophrenia to get locked into a series of repetitive behaviors, he says. You think to yourself, they can't be talking about me. Schizophrenia? No way. Repetitive behavior? Do they think I did this? Suddenly, your cell phone goes off. Hello?
Hi, hon, it's me. Could you stop at the store and pick up some chicken and milk? Oh, and I need some bread and cereal too.
No problem, Mom. I'll be right over. Everyone has trouble sleeping sometimes. But what if the one thing that helped you drift off wasn't what you thought it was? For one man, a remedy for his crippling insomnia turned into a terrifying nightmare, all because of a few lights in the distance. A young man suffering from insomnia was trying to fall asleep one night. After many minutes, he was still awake as it got more and more late. He turned on his side and looked out the window. Noticing 2 streetlights in the distance, he rested his eyes on them and soon fell asleep. The next night, he found himself once again kept awake by his sleep disorder. Remembering the remedy he'd tried the night before, he turned to his side and looked out the window for the 2 streetlights. He found them and once again fell asleep peacefully. The next night, his sleeping troubles were back, but he simply looked out the window for the streetlights and rested his eyes on them. Tonight, they were flickering every few seconds. He assumed that the bulbs would soon burn out, and as his eyes began to fall shut, the lights finally burnt out. He woke up in the morning refreshed. As he got up, he looked out the window toward the streetlights, hoping someone would come to fix them. However, as he looked, he noticed something odd. There weren't streetlights there. He leaned closer to the window to double check, but still the streetlights were nowhere to be found. Then he looked down and noticed small claw marks on the windowsill, as if something was perched there. His insomnia got worse. A mysterious photograph, an innocent boy, and a deadly secret waiting to be uncovered. What if a picture wasn't just a memory, but a promise of a terrifying end? In this chilling tale, a seemingly harmless find turns into a fatal obsession. One school day, a boy named Tom was sitting in class and doing math. It was 6 more minutes until after school. As he was doing his homework, something caught his eye. His desk was next to the window, and he turned and looked to the grass outside. It looked like a picture. When school was over, he ran to the spot where he saw it. He ran fast so that no one else could grab it. He picked it up and smiled. It had a picture of the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. She had a dress with tights on and red shoes, and her hand was formed into a peace sign. She was so beautiful, he wanted to meet her. So he ran all over the school and asked everyone if they knew her or have ever seen her before. But everyone he asked said no. He was devastated. When he was home, he asked his older sister if she knew the girl, but unfortunately, she also said no. It was very late, so Tom walked up the stairs, placed the picture on his bedside table, and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, Tom was awakened by a tap on his window. It was like a nail tapping. He got scared. After the tapping, he heard a giggle. He saw a shadow near his window, so he got out of his bed, walked toward his window, opened it up, and followed the giggling. By the time he reached it, it was gone. The next day again, he asked his neighbors if they knew her. Everybody said, sorry, no. When his mother came home, he even asked her if she knew her. She said no. He went to his room, placed the picture on his desk, and fell asleep. Once again, he was awakened by a tapping. He took the picture and followed the giggling. He walked across the road, when suddenly he got hit by a car. He was dead with the picture in his hand. The driver got out of the car and tried to help him, but it was too late. Suddenly, he saw the picture and picked it up. He saw a cute girl holding up 3 fingers. What would you do if something was always knocking at your door? Not a person, not an animal, but something else. It started when I was 6 years old. I was in school, it was the middle of a reading lesson, and I needed to pee badly. At that age, actually, a fair few kids still wet themselves, and I always got paranoid about embarrassing myself in public like that. I stuck my hand up and told Mrs. Zebby that I needed to use the bathroom. After the usual speech about how I should have gone at break, she gave me the key to the disabled access toilet, as it was the closest one to my classroom. It was the middle of 5th period, and the corridors were empty and seemed cavernous to me. I was a short, scrawny thing back then. I sometimes had trouble with doors, especially unlocking them, and I fumbled for a good minute or two in trying to get the blasted thing open. Anyway, as I sat on my porcelain throne, there came a knocking at the door. "Someone's in here," I called, disgruntled at this disturbance. There came a pause. Then the knocking resumed. It was faster now, more determined. "Wait a minute!" The knocking slowed, and a voice replied.
Let me in, I need to come inside.
The speaker's tone was thin and reedy, an adult I didn't recognize. I may have been 6, but I also had a fairly good understanding of bathroom etiquette, mainly that you didn't let more than one person into an area only slightly larger than a cupboard. "Go away!" The knocking intensified again, until it was a frantic drumbeat, just a few feet from me, and out of sight. I heard the voice shouting something, growing more and more desperate.
Let me in, just open the door, please.
I was terrified by that point. The hammering and yelling was so loud, and yet nobody had come to investigate it. Eventually, my teacher came to find me, angry because I'd been gone almost half an hour. When I refused to open the door to let her in, she got a spare key from the receptionist and then took me to the headmaster's office and called my parents. I was suspended for the rest of the week. I never told anyone what happened. It was a few weeks before my next encounter with this phenomenon. I had just celebrated my 7th birthday, and my family were having a barbecue in my honor. It was a gloriously sunny day, but as soon as we'd set everything up in the allotments behind our house, the coal refused to light. My dad asked me to go and get some fire starters from the shed in the front garden. It was pretty cramped inside, and I wouldn't fit all the way, so I just opened it up, stood on tiptoes to reach the shelf holding my objective, then shut the door. As I turned away, a frantic knocking hit the other side of the door.
Open up! I need to come through!
This voice was not the one I'd heard the month before. It was deeper, more brooding and angry. I said nothing and hurried away. I had no idea what was happening, but it frightened me. As I walked away, there came a final thump like a fist being slammed against wood, and I heard his voice again.
You little bastard! I'll rip your fucking teeth out! Let me through!
I ran back to my party and spent the rest of the day glancing over my shoulder. As you might have guessed by now, there were a lot of these voices. I count at least 30 total. Every month or so, I used to get them, pleading to be let through doors. Almost always, it would be immediately after I shut the door behind me, as though these strange entities had been following me. I never told anyone, but to be honest, I kind of just got used to it. It always made me jump, and some of the voices would make me feel uneasy, but I knew that I was safe so long as I did not open the door. Some of the voices I got used to the extent that I even named them. There was one which always used to appear at my front door at home. We have frosted glass, and I could see a silhouette of an average-sized man wearing a cap of some kind. He never spoke, but occasionally would push envelopes containing blank pieces of paper through the letterbox. I called him the postman. He was one of the more unsettling ones. If I tried to speak to him, he would look up sharply, then begin knocking. I generally left the postman alone. 20 years on, and I've retained as much normality as possible. I have plenty of friends, and I even have an on and off relationship with a girl I met last year. Not bad for a guy who wakes up in the middle of the night and listens intently to noises you can't hear on the other side of the door. Yeah, my buddies think I'm strange and kooky, but they put up with it. They're all great. I'll miss them. You see, things have started to get strange. Well, stranger than usual, I suppose. 3 weeks ago, I awoke sweating and crying, though I do not know why. My dream had been, from what I recall, fairly normal, when a huge shadow had abruptly fallen over everything. Literally, the second I opened my eyes, there came the knocking at my bedroom door. Not just normal knocking, though. This was truly frantic. "Who goes there?" I yelled.
Please, help us!
It replied. I was surprised. It was the sadistic, angry voice that I remember from my father's shed on my 7th birthday, but it seemed genuinely sincere. There was a pained tone to it, too, as though the speaker were grievously wounded. I actually found myself pulling back the sheets to get up, but I hesitated. I had never before been tempted to open the door. I suppose as a child, I had so rigorously drummed into my head the idea that whatever lay beyond was evil that it was just common sense. To be quite honest, I came very close to letting the thing into my room that morning. I held out in the end. It got worse. Just 2 days later, I was in my local corner shop. I just paid for a bottle of milk and a newspaper when a great force slammed against the shop door. Simultaneously, a voice began screaming, a long, keening squeal of pain. I whirled to face the door, but there were so many flyers plastered over the glass that I could only just make out the shape of a woman on the other side, slapping her palms against the window. The shopkeeper stared at me as though I were crazy. In the end, I asked if he had a bathroom I could use, murmured some half-thought-out excuse, and hid there for 10 minutes until the screaming stopped. There were 4 more incidents between then and now, a mixture of screams and tearful begging. The postman stopped by yesterday, too. He knocked politely before sliding his usual letter through the letterbox. Then another, a total of 10 plain brown envelopes. The postman waited for a few minutes, knocking occasionally, and then he left me alone. Each letter contained a sheet of A4 paper, but somebody had taken a black pen to the pages, scribbling and shading them with such vigor that there were large tears around the center and the edges were frayed. I shoved them back into their envelopes and tried to put it from my mind. Earlier, my bedroom door shook violently. It wasn't a scream or a howl or a roar that I heard, though. It was just crying. Dozens and dozens of voices sobbing quietly. Another blow struck my door. Plaster flaked from the walls and twirled to the carpet. Still no pleas or bargaining, just sobbing. Crash. I jumped up from my chair. Crash. A hairline crack split the frame of the door in one corner. My phone began to ring, and I heard a sharp rapping at the glass of my window, behind the curtains. I tried answering the phone, but it was simply yet more voices crying. Not even sobbing, though. More like bawling in terror and anguish. I hung up, but it kept ringing. So I took the battery out. I have shoved most of my furniture against the door and window. It has been 3 hours since this latest attempt at entry began. The battering has not abated, nor has the crying. I'm fairly sure that my door won't hold much longer. As for my mediocre barricade, it could be swept aside in 2 minutes. I find myself faced with the very real possibility of death. So I am writing this memoir of sorts, just in case something does happen. Crash. What do they want? Crash. Do they even want to hurt me? Crash. What could have driven them to this? Crash. Maybe I should open the door. Crash. Maybe I should let them in. Silence fell. I realized that even the crying had ceased. For a whole minute, I sat there. Then I got up and hurried to my door, eager to escape this claustrophobic situation. Perhaps I'd go outside where I could be far away from any doors and from the damned knocking. I pulled away my barricade and turned the handle. Locked. Kneeling, I peered through the keyhole. Beyond my bedroom door was not the corridor that I remembered, but another room, some kind of library or classroom, I think. It seemed unoccupied, but for one kid sitting and reading with his back to me. I banged on the door. Hey, kid, let me out, okay? He glanced over his shoulder. Yeah, over here. Could you open the door, please? I can't. I'm in detention. I'm not supposed to talk to anyone. Go away. He turned from me. Confused and exasperated, I began to stand up. A loud bang shattered the silence once more. I realized it sounded like a fist being pounded against glass. My window. I heard it again. But this was not the frantic knocking of somebody wanting to get inside. This was not even an attempt to break in. Whatever was beyond the curtain and glass knew I was inside. It knew I was frightened. In the most predatory and sadistic way possible, it wanted me to be afraid. I turned back to the door and began hammering on it, frantically. Hey, let me in, okay? I really need you to open the door. Did you like today's stories? If you want to listen to more chilling tales like this, be sure to like and subscribe. Until next time, stay scared.